to be back. It's great to have a solid committee this year. We're going to do some great work. First, we're going to start off with committee introductions. We do have a couple of new members. We'll start on this end with Representative McDonald. Just district number, fun fact or two if you want.
Okay. My name is Nikki McDonald. I represent portions of Overland Park and Olathe. I guess House District 49. And a fun fact about me, I was a teacher before I was a longtime stay-at-home mom, and this is my second career.
Representative Neely, 42nd District, Eudora, Tonganoxie, Easton, and a little sliver of Lawrence. Fun fact, my middle name's Western, so I thought I had to be a cowboy, but I was really bad at it.
Alan Rivas, District 63, which is all of Atchison and Donovan County. There's nothing fun about me at all, actually, so, but I like to have a good time.
Angel Roser, District 67, Manhattan, West Side. Went to K-State, and I am a huge Wildcat fan.
Laura Williams, House District 30. My district makes up parts of Lenexa and Olathe, and a fun fact about me would be I'm a Jayhawk and I love dogs.
Angela Steens, House District 39. That's Shawnee and Lake Quivira. Fun fact about me, I used to disc jockey.
I'm the ranking minority, Representative Shu, House District 25, which is a bunch of small communities in Northeast Johnson County. Fun fact, I might not look it, but I was actually born in Switzerland.
Representative Mary Lynn Poskin, Kansas House District 20, which is Leawood and Overland Park. This is my 5th year on the committee, and in the first year, we established that House District 20 has more financial institutions per capita than any other district in the state. Fun fact about me is I can install my own hardwood floors.
Hi, Representative King from Heston. House District 74, which is between Newton and McPherson. We have most of Harvey County, western third of Marion County, and a southern part of McPherson County. Fun fact, wow. Former KDOT secretary a decade ago. So this actually was the Transportation Committee room. So I'm very familiar with standing in front of the podium talking to legislators.
Good morning, Representative Valdenia Wynn from Kansas City, Kansas, 34th District. This is my 25th year in the legislature. Primarily, I do education, but I remember being on this committee 100 years ago. Fun fact, probably you all hated your history classes, but I'm a professor of history at the community college, and I love history.
Representative Mike Thompson, and I represent District 33 from Bonner Springs going east to Turner, and it ends right there at 635. Fun fact, outlaws in our family. Great-great-great-grandfather was a representative out of Manhattan and participated in the 1893 legislative wars and swung the sledgehammer downstairs with the speaker.
Good morning. Virgil Weigel, 56th District, which is south central part of Topeka and a little bit out of the county. Former life, I was a police officer, federal agent, state agent, and did that for 28 years, retired, and now I'm doing this. Fun fact, I like to work on old cars from the 60s and 70s. Thank you.
My name is Kyler Swilly. I serve the 102nd District, which is just Hutch, mostly the southern part of Hutch. I'm a freshman. This is my first year in the legislature, and a fun fact is actually last year I worked as a committee assistant.
Chuck Smith, I'm from the real Pittsburgh, and I have Chicopee, Annapolis, along with pretty much just Pittsburgh. I have 7 children. They're all out of college. They're all married. They all have jobs. And I have worked finance very hard to make ends meet. So it's really good to be on this committee. So thank you.
So Representative Rivas, I believe you said you're no fun. I believe you're a dentist. Is that correct?
True disclosure, I'm a dentist. I'm also a pilot. And I used to own a travel agency, so I got a lot of stories.
Well, on the dentistry end, yeah, you're absolutely no fun.
I did request a larger room to put a dental chair in at the request of some of the legislators, but I was denied.
Oh, well. Representative White?
I was hoping you'd skip me.
Absolutely.
I'm Gary White, 115th District. I have 5 counties. I'm from Ashland. That's due south of Dodge City, 50 miles. Fun fact. I'm just a humble farmer. Thank you.
It's a good campaign slogan. Just a humble farmer. I believe Representative Bohai is online. Representative Bohai, you care to chime in? She is no longer online. Okay, I know. She reached out earlier. So I am Representative Hoheisel, chairing this committee for the 3rd year. This is my 7th year in the legislature. Before my last 2 years as chairman, I was vice chairman of this committee. Fun fact about me, Representative Shu, we came in together 7 years ago, and in that time, Kansas City Chiefs have not missed an AFC championship game. So there's something to it. This committee does not tolerate Chiefs slander at all, just so you guys know. If you can't handle that, talk to the speaker and request a committee change. Just want to cover a couple of housekeeping items. I try to run an efficient committee, but a very loose committee. As you can see, we joke around, we have fun. Starting on time is very important because of how the schedule lays out with Monday, Wednesday committees. As you guys know, we're a week and a half into session and we're finally meeting for the first time because of how the schedule laid out. So we do have a lot of work to do in a very short amount of time. So we're going to try to be efficient, and getting started on time is a big part of that. I know Republicans, we calendar or caucus on Wednesday mornings across the street. If you guys could try to hurry back as soon as possible, get up here so we can get committee rolling. Everybody was sent the rules. They look the same as every other committee. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns about the rules as presented? Seeing none, we will accept those rules. Yep, I got that too. I wanted to get that stuff out of the way so I didn't forget. And now we're going to do staff introductions. We do have a couple of new staffers this year as well. So we'll start off with staff introductions.
Mike Ditch, Legislative Research. This is my 2nd session and first time serving on this committee.
What's your fun fact?
I played golf for Washburn University.
I'm Nicole Fielder. I'm with Legislative Research, and I was lucky enough to be staffing this committee last year during my first session, and I'm glad to be back. And my fun fact is that I've seen every episode of Reba.
Hi, I'm Eileen Ma, and I'm from the Reviser Statutes Office. This is my 11th session, and during every one of those, I've staffed some form of financial institutions and insurance. I am still staffing financial institutions and insurance, so you'll see me duck out of this room and head over at 9:30. My fun fact is that I went to law school for a second career, and when I started working for the legislature 11 years ago, my hair was black.
Jason Thompson, Reviser Statutes Office. This is my 19th session, but my first on this committee. I mostly staff Judiciary and Corrections, those committees on both the House and Senate side. Fun fact, I'm a mustard enthusiast, which Representative Poskin knows from my time at CSG Toll Fellowship with her. So yeah, there you go.
Rich?
Hello, Rich Mergen, Committee Secretary. This is my 14th session and 3rd year now with Chairman Hoheisel. Fun fact, I enjoy working with him a great deal, actually.
Your payment will come later today for that. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cole Hill. I am the AV Tech for 582. This is my first session, first time in this committee, first time doing all this stuff, so it's quite exciting. My fun fact is I'm not a Chiefs fan, I'm a Seahawks fan, so I won't say anything because my team's not even in the playoffs.
Understood. Great. Well, committee, please, this is not my staff here, this is your staff. Please utilize them as much as you need, Rich included. They're a wealth of knowledge and they're very helpful. So if they can do anything for you, please let them know. Want to move on to bill introductions. Because again of the schedule layout, February 3rd is the last day to introduce committee bills. So if you have something in the pipeline, we need to get it out. Come and see me if you do have something that you have in a pipeline that you want to try to get heard. I probably will be building and finalizing the schedule by the end of this week. After all of our presentations, we have the banks and the banking commissioner in today. Next week, we'll hear from the credit unions and their regulator. And then we'll also hear from Allen Conroy and Capers for next week's 2 meetings. And then after that, we have 5 meetings left to hear legislation and to pass it out before turnaround. So it's a very compressed schedule. So if you guys do have something you want to try to get heard, come and see me. Let's discuss it and let's see where it falls on priority. So with that, I'm going to open that up to bill introductions for the committee. Do we have any bill introductions from the committee? Seeing none, looks like we have a bunch of lazy committee members that haven't done anything in the off session. Any bill introductions from anybody out in the gallery? Wow, geez Louise. Going to be a very short committee. I do have one actually. It's going to be 25 RS 0353. This modifies the interest credit dividend in Capers 3. Questions, comments from the committee? Seeing none, we will consider that accepted. All right, we're going to move on to our presentation today. We have the Office of Banking Commissioner here with us. I believe Commissioner Herndon is online via WebEx. We also have Jesse Becker to present today in person, so we'll call Jesse up first. Jesse, welcome to the committee, sir.
Members of the committee. Hold a second. Yeah. Okay. Well, good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jesse Becker. I serve as the Director of Finance and Administration as well as the Chief Financial Officer for the Office of the State Bank Commissioner. Joining us today on WebEx is our Bank Commissioner, David Herndon. And also in the audience with us today is Deputy Commissioner Tim Kemp, Deputy Commissioner Mike Insbrenner, as well as General Counsel Brock Rayler. The Office of the State Bank Commissioner plays a crucial role in regulating and supervising more than 12,000 state-chartered financial institutions and consumer lending entities. Our mission is to ensure these institutions operate safely, soundly, and in compliance with the laws. As stewards of public trust, we aim to protect depositors, safeguard borrowers, educate consumers, and create an environment that fosters economic growth. We work closely with our federal counterparts, primarily the Federal Reserve Bank and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC. Furthermore, we maintain strong relationships with industry trade associations. As you'll hear in today's testimony, the banking system in Kansas is healthy and strong. The agency operates through 5 budgetary departments. The Division of Banking and Trust oversees state-chartered banks, trust companies, trust departments, and the TEFI. TEFI stands for Technology-Enabled Fiduciary Financial Institution and is unique in Kansas. This division is led by Deputy Commissioner Tim Kemp. The Division of Consumer and Mortgage Lending, CML, regulates non-depository institutions such as mortgage businesses, money transmitters, consumer credit companies, and debt management servicers. CML is under the direction of Deputy Commissioner Mike Insbrenner. The Finance and Administration Division, this is the division I oversee, and we're responsible for our day-to-day operations as well as budget, accounting, travel, training arrangements and tracking, and HR functions. Headed by General Counsel Brock Rayler, the legal department works with the legislature and represents the agency, the board, the commission, and Commissioner Herndon in legal matters. Also, the legal department provides guidance to regulated entities on Kansas laws. The IT department, led by Matt Hodges, manages the agency's internal information technology needs and conducts IT examinations for regulated businesses. Both the Banking and Trust Division and the CML Division are accredited by the Conference of State Bank Supervisors, CSBS, a national organization of banking regulators across all 50 states as well as several U.S. territories. The agency has 114 authorized FTEs. As of the end of last month, we had 3 vacancies. This equates to a vacancy rate of less than 3%. OSBC operates as a fee-funded agency, deriving its revenue from bank assessments and CML licensing fees. These fund our operating expenses. Our fiscal year 2025 budget request is $13.757 million, again, fully fee-funded. Not only are we fee-funded, but we are also required to transfer money to the state general fund. Each year, we are statutorily mandated to transfer $100,000 of our banking fee fund to the SGF. Here is a list of our contacts. We encourage you to reach out to us if you have any questions or need any assistance. Also, our website has a lot of information and it's fairly up to date. I think in the handouts today, you probably received a pamphlet that's updated every quarter, and soon it'll be updated on our website as well. But that just is a sample of the information available on our website. The first division I'd like to talk about a little bit more in depth is our Banking and Trust Division. The Banking and Trust Division conducts safety and soundness examinations on all regulated banks and trust companies every 18 months, or more frequently for the large institutions or those deemed as troubled. While we oversee the TEFI, the Kansas TEFI Act does not allow us to perform safety and soundness exams on this type of entity. However, we do conduct exams on all entities under our jurisdiction, including the TEFI, in the following areas: compliance on applicable state and federal laws, Bank Secrecy Act, Anti-Money Laundering Acts, and information technology. To meet the 18-month examination mandate, we are allowed to alternate examinations with the FDIC and the Federal Reserve. For larger or troubled banks, joint examinations are conducted with these federal partners. In 2024, Kansas had 165 state-chartered banks, 31 with active trust departments, and 12 trust companies. Collectively, these entities manage $210 billion. Our safety and soundness exams adhere to international industry standards. We assigned ratings for capital adequacy, asset quality, management, sufficient earnings, liquidity, and sensitivity to market risks. This is known as the CAMELS rating system. Each of these categories is given a rating 1 to 5, with 1 being the best. Then there's an overall rating given, also 1 to 5, with 1 being the best. If an examination reveals unsafe, unsound, or non-compliant practices, the entity is classified as troubled or a problem institution. Enforcement actions depend on the severity of the findings. As I mentioned earlier, we do not conduct safety and soundness examinations on the TEFI. This isn't by choice. It's because the Kansas TEFI Act prohibits us from doing so. The Act also imposes two additional restrictions. First, it specifically disallows us from reviewing and providing an assessment on earnings. And the second directive is that the Kansas TEFI Act mandates that any goodwill asset be included on the company's capital. These three statutory directives represent a significant departure from the standards we apply to other entities. They deviate from the Uniform Financial Institutions Rating System, the Uniform Interagency Trust Rating System, and they also even deviate from generally accepted accounting principles, known as GAAP. In practice, this means oversight is weaker and less comprehensive than the oversight we provide for other institutions. On November 21st, 2024, Commissioner Herndon delivered testimony before the Kansas Joint Committee on Fiduciary Financial Institutes Oversight. His remarks on 21st addressed the TEFI in more detail. As of the end of 2024, only 6 of the 165 Kansas state chartered banks were rated 3, 4, or 5. This low percentage has been consistent for the past 5 years, underscoring the stability of the banking system in Kansas. And this month, one of the 3 ratings, we had 5 of them at the beginning of the month. Currently now, as of 2 weeks ago, I believe, that has been reduced down to 4. And we were in a meeting yesterday. I think even there will be another additional 3 that will be removed from that list. It'll be given a 1 or 2, but it's still premature for that as far as I understand. This graph highlights the trends in the number of banks across Kansas, as well as the total assets held by our banks. The blue line, which represents the number of state chartered banks, shows a steady decline. Since 2019, the number of state chartered banks has decreased by 13%. On the other hand, the bar chart shows a contrasting trend. Bank assets have been steadily increasing. During the same period, assets grew by $13.5 billion, a rise of 28%. This combination of fewer banks and growing total assets is not unique to Kansas. Nationally, we observe a similar pattern. The number of banks across the country has also declined by 13%, the exact same amount as in Kansas. And then when it comes to assets nationally, the increase is comparable as well. Nationwide, banks' assets grew by 30% during the same period. Kansas is only one of 12 states without a bank exceeding $10 billion in assets. CrossFirst was nearing this threshold, but earlier this year, it was acquired by an out-of-state bank from Illinois. So CrossFirst will be removed from our state's ranks this year. The smallest banks shown on the second chart, while modest in size, are often the sole institutions in their communities, the sole financial institutions in their communities, playing an essential role in the local economies. The 4 smallest banks in Kansas are the only banks in those towns. This pie chart shows how bank assets are divided. A quarter of them, shown in red there, are invested in securities. This includes municipal securities issued by local governments that support critical infrastructure projects. In other words, our banks are oftentimes interwoven into the communities by providing bonds for the community's school districts, city government, and/or county governments. The state's 12 trust companies and 31 bank trust departments manage over $148 billion in client assets. Last year, Midwest Institutional Trust Company in Overland Park assumed custodial assets that almost doubled overall trust assets for the state. This slide visually shows the growth of trust assets in Kansas, as well as our most recent valuation of the TEFI. It is shown in red. It probably shows up better in your handouts. Our IT department fulfills two primary roles. First, like any agency's IT team, it handles a wide range of essential tasks. These include infrastructure and hardware installation, software and system administration, cybersecurity, help desk support, as well as data management. Second, and more importantly though, our IT examination team evaluates the IT operations of entities under our oversight and conducts specialized cybersecurity risk assessments on those entities. Our IT examination team evaluates regulated companies to ensure policies, procedures, and practices safeguard both institutional and consumer data. IT exams focus on those areas there. I won't read them, but that's what our IT exams focus on. And our IT exams are usually done concurrently with the safety and soundness and compliance exams. IT examinations follow guidelines established by 4 federal acts and codes, along with several regulatory initiatives. However, keeping up with these guidelines in the threat environment is challenging, especially as cybersecurity becomes increasingly complex. The Kansas Office of the State Bank Commission is fortunate to have an IT team that is considered a leader in the IT community by its peers. In fact, other states have told us they are thinking about adopting our hiring model. Another notable honor is that the head of our IT examination department, Kylie Fine, has been invited to serve as one of only 3 state participants on the committee that is tasked for developing the banking IT examination. This will be the IT exam used by the FDIC, Federal Reserve Bank, as well as Kansas State or national state IT examiners. At present, OSBC's IT team operates independently from OITS, but there has been discussion about merging our IT department with OITS. However, it's the second role that I've been talking about, the IT examination role, that highlights why maintaining our department's independence from OITS is so crucial. OSBC's distinctive IT structure and expertise are an asset not only to the agency but to the state. Remaining independent allows us to address the unique threats facing financial institutions. The next division I'll talk about is the Consumer Mortgage Lending Division. The CML division has 2 main responsibilities. First, it licenses non-depository entities, and then second, it examines those entities to make sure that they comply with state and federal laws. In total, this division oversees around 12,000 licensed companies and professionals. If I could direct your attention to the first highlighted row, this shows CML licensing activity. You can see that the number of mortgage loan originators is declining significantly. Rising mortgage rates have led to a 38% decline in mortgage loan originators over the last 2 years. The second highlighted line is a new service being offered in Kansas. This is called Earned Wage Access, EWA. And so far this year, we've received 5 applications to apply for licenses for companies to provide that service. A distinctive role of our CML division is that it supports consumer education and outreach through grants funded by assessed fees and penalties. Since 1999, over $6 million in grants have been distributed, benefiting more than 25,000 Kansans on average annually, with average total grants also averaging about $150,000 per year. However, in FY24, we awarded $190,000. Also, the OSBC sponsors the Kansas Financial Scholars Essay Scholarship Contest for high school seniors. FY24 was the 10th year we have offered this essay scholarship. A total of $10,000 was awarded last year to 5 recipients who were planning to continue their education in Kansas. Here are the 8 organizations that received grants from us last year. I mentioned that historically our outreach affects about 25,000 Kansans per year, but in 24, if you take a look at the subtotal line, we directly interacted with 29,947 individuals. Plus, the last 2 programs on this chart represent 2 mass media projects that we co-sponsored. Alex, in his presentation and his testimony, will show you one of those. But we estimate that these media campaigns received about 1.1 million impressions or views. Finally, Mr. Chair and committee, here is a high-level overview of some of the legislative bills we plan to introduce during the 2025 legislation. These will be introduced on the Senate side. These changes have been identified by either our office or the industry. One of the key requests is to update the banking code with specific timelines for when banks and trust companies must report director changes to the OSBC. Additionally, we propose that any bank involved in a merger transaction resulting in it being dissolved will have its charter automatically deemed void at the time of the merger. We are also recommending updating the trust code. These changes will ensure that out-of-state trust companies operating in Kansas are held to the same standards as Kansas trust companies operating in other states. Furthermore, we aim to simplify the requirements for Kansas trust companies to engage in bulk transfers of trust assets with out-of-state institutions. Mr. Chair and committee, as you move forward this session, we respectfully ask for your support on those bills. Also, we ask that you consider how an independent IT department benefits the banking system across Kansas as these conversations continue with OITs. And finally, regarding the TEFI Act, we wish to emphasize that the Office of the State Bank Commissioner continues to have significant ongoing concerns regarding the oversight of the limitations imposed upon us. Currently, we are unable to provide any assurance regarding TEFI safety and soundness. So, Mr. Chair, thank you. Committee, thank you. I now stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. Before we get to questions, Commissioner Hurden, would you like to add anything, sir?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to appear remotely today. And I think Mr. Becker gave a very thorough, comprehensive overview of our agency and the strength of the Kansas banking and financial industry. So again, thank you for allowing me to appear remotely, but I will participate in answering any questions if called upon. Thank you.
Appreciate that, sir. Committee, we're going to open it up to questions. Do we have questions from the committee? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Jesse, for your presentation. I know, going back to the ratings, I know those stay anonymous. However, there's a Lenexa bank near my district that has had some federal issues over the last, I think, since 2023, and then in November of 2024, they were hit again with new and continuing deficiencies that were found by the feds and your office. My question is, when it comes to rating 3, 4, 5, and more specifically with this bank in Lenexa, is there a plan with your office that helps these banks become moving in a healthier direction? And the reason why I ask is I would think that the State Banking Commission would be working with this bank in general on in protecting communities. I think healthy banks equals healthy communities. And what does that look like on your end? And then when do you draw the line in the sand and say, hey, this isn't going to work out?
Mr. Chair, that's an excellent question.
Mr. Chairman, may I answer on behalf
Please.
of Jesse, please?
Sir.
Thank you. The bank that you reference is a troubled institution. It is publicly known. As you saw in the presentation, banks have a series of corrective actions depending upon the severity of the issues or the problems there. The first two, a board resolution and a memorandum of understanding, are confidential, but they become public when they become a consent order or more severe. The bank in particular is Small Business Bank in Lenexa, Kansas. It's approximately a $90 million institution. We have been working with it for us, and it's a Federal Reserve Bank member, so we in the Federal Reserve have been working with it extensively for the last several years. The bank is subject to 4 consent orders, 2 by the Federal Reserve and 2 by the Office of the State Bank Commissioner over its Safety and Soundness and Information Technology and Bank Secrecy Act issues. So there are several issues there. So much so that we have, under my direction as authorized by Kansas statute, we have put a special deputy in the bank who reports directly to me as to the daily activities and the processes and procedures. The special deputy is a experienced banker with experience in fixing troubled banks. Her name is Michelle Conley. And she, as I mentioned, she reports to me. She, in essence, is the de facto board of directors and making decisions to improve the safety and soundness. So yes, the answer to your question is we are very, very involved in the daily operations and working with the Federal Reserve to rectify the identified issues for the bank. It's too early to predict what's going to happen, other than to tell you that the bank has been and remains in dire financial condition. The owners of the bank have been supportive and cooperative in dealing with the issues. In fact, they have one of the provisions of the consent order is to maintain a minimum capital ratio of 9% of their assets, and they are funding the bank's losses to maintain that capital. So we hope that there's a positive and successful outcome, but it is still too early to tell.
Mr. Becker, do you have anything to add to that? Representative Foskett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is quite simple. The decline in number of banks in the last 5 years, both at the state and national level, is that mostly attributable to mergers and consolidations?
Mr. Chair, absolutely. That's the case we're seeing. What's going on there is, well, the community banks across the nation and in Kansas too, largely in the past have been family owned. What we're seeing now as new generations come along, there's not the interest to take the family bank. Different career paths are taken. Also, as you mentioned, so the bank is usually sold out of the family. So also, we're dealing with economies of scale. It is just cheaper to run a larger bank than it is a smaller bank or several smaller banks. So there's economies of scale during a merger or acquisition. So that's what we're seeing.
My question, my follow-up question would be, we hear about like grocery deserts. Is that a concern for the state of Kansas that we might have banking deserts for our communities?
I might defer to Commissioner Herndon on this, but yes, that is a concern. I mentioned that our local banks are usually a vital member of our community, but we are also seeing technological changes that a physical bank is not as needed as in the past. So maybe it's more of an emotional loss than it is a financial loss. I know at my credit union now, there's not even tellers anymore. It's a screen, and they're probably in their living room, and we're conducting the transaction. So I'll see if Deputy Commissioner Tim Kemp or Commissioner Herndon would like to add on that.
May I please, Mr. Chairman? We have not seen a financial desert yet, although we watch it. What we've seen is most of the mergers and acquisitions continue, the acquiring institution continues a presence in the community, and it's oftentimes simply a name change, maybe some staffing changes, but they still continue to serve the community. So although we watch for, are conscious of it, we have not seen it develop noticeably.
Member of OSBC with a credit union account. Interesting.
Mr. Chair, if I may, we're not allowed to do business with our entities that we have oversight.
I thought that was an endorsement, but Representative Weigel, do you have?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I was going to talk a little bit about the banks, but I think that's been answered. As far as the TEFI Act and this institution, I believe it's somewhere out around McPherson or somewhere. Is that where they're based?
They're in Heston.
Heston.
If you don't exercise any oversight over this entity, what assurance do investors or the people that live in the community where this is operating, how do they find out any information, what's going on with that institution, and does somebody have a rating system other than the State Banking Commission as far as monitoring what they're doing?
Mr. Chair, and I'll probably defer, I'll start this conversation or start the answer, but we do have oversight. It is just more limited than the other institutions. We do examinations on Bank Secrecy Act as well as Money Laundering Acts, also IT exams. It's just not as stringent as the other institutions, and we are unable to give a position on the safety and soundness of the TEFI. We are unable to give an assessment of the earnings of the institution.
Okay, kind of answer my question, but if you can't give anybody else, is there any other entity, either state or federal, that can?
And Representative, we may let Commissioner Herndon chime in on this as well. I know he has some thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject TEFI is called Beneficient, or BFF, or Beneficient Fiduciary Financial. It is a subsidiary of a parent company called Beneficient that is publicly traded. So it has oversight from the Securities and Exchange Commission. It's publicly traded on NASDAQ. We do monitor the financial performance of the parent company through SEC quarterly filings and that sort of thing. And again, the performance has been dreadful. The losses are enormous. The performance has resulted, the stock performance has resulted in NASDAQ issuing delisting notifications because the stock is traded for less than $1. It currently is trading about 62 cents. There are continuous. I was in a conversation for about 3 hours yesterday with the principals of the TEFI, and they're telling me what their plans are to rectify the financial performance. Again, time will tell if that's successful. There have been several lawsuits filed by investors. By nature of the definition of a TEFI, it provides liquidity sources for illiquid assets to wealthy individuals and entities. One of the reasons that the Kansas legislature decided not to allow us to consider earnings and such on the safety and soundness was because they do not accept deposits. A TEFI is simply an entity that takes an illiquid asset, say a real estate investment, that the owners need liquidity, so they sell that intangible asset to the TEFI at a negotiated price. The TEFI then holds it to maturity and recovers its investment and presumably a profit through that transaction. Additionally, the TEFI Act requires that 2.5% of the transactions performed go to the state of Kansas to provide economic development incentives in the subject counties that are permitted under the TEFI Act, and the Commerce Department does that. This particular TEFI has not been able to close transactions. Consequently, the Commerce Department has only received the portion of the annual assessment that they pay to our department in the last year. So the oversight or the safety or the financial viability of the company is certainly in question, and we rely on the Securities and Exchange Commission filings to monitor those events.
Thank you for that, Commissioner. Michael?
Thank you for that. That's a very good explanation. I have one other quick question, and it's going to shift gears. When you were talking about Kansas consumer initiatives and funds that are transferred to different organizations, I think credit counseling is one of those. Do you have any relationship with the school districts as far as going in and either giving a presentation to basically high school students that are going to be entering the workforce and getting bank accounts to help them better understand and negotiate the financial part of their lives?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Yes, we do. That is one of our main outreach programs. And the organization escapes me right now, but it was on the slide. And that is to work with teachers to develop curriculums to educate high school, not even just high school, but school-age children of all ages, to educate them on financial decision-making and financial responsibility.
Sounds like a good program. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you so much, Mr. Becker. And thank you, Mr. Commissioner, for joining us as well, and look forward to working with you this session.
Thank you. Likewise.
All righty. Committee, up next, we have Alex Orrell with the Kansas Bankers Association. Alex, welcome to committee, sir.
Well, good morning, committee. Good to see everybody. I have until about 11:30. Is that right, Mr. Chairman? Oh, I'm just kidding, sir. Good morning, committee. My name is Alex Orrell, Senior Vice President of Government Relations for the Kansas Bankers Association. I want to say welcome back. I know this is your first day, and welcome to the new committee members that are on the committee as well. A lot of good things happen in this committee that sometimes get overlooked at times because it's not sometimes the sexiest of subjects, but it is critically important to the state's economy. I do want to introduce Kelly Van Zoll, who is our Vice President of Government Relations and Staff Attorney, the other part of the lobby team down here, and also an attorney so a lot smarter than I. Then we also have a very special guest. And Kat UC Zuckerman, she is a 3L at Washburn Law, been working in our legal department for the last couple of years and has actually accepted employment with the KBA when she graduates in May. So welcome, Kat. I'm going to break my testimony into two parts. I'm going to do a KBA update, and then I'm going to get into some industry specifics, but I'm going to try and be cognizant of time. I did provide you a significant amount of information. I'm not going to run through every single page, but if you have some questions, I'm around. My contact information is here. Want to be a resource for you. The KBA, for some of the new members, we are the 5th oldest banking association in the country. We were founded in 1887. And our KBA staff team is led by Doug Wareham. And interestingly, you think about the banking sector, you think about stability. We try and emulate that at the association level too. Doug is only the 7th ever CEO of the KBA since 1887. So very proud of that fact that we're able to keep that stability. The KBA staff has also grown significantly. We're not a traditional advocacy organization. We're association professionals that happen to do government relations too, and I'm gonna get into that here in a second. But the KBA staff team is now up to 42 professionals. That includes 15 attorneys licensed in 5 states. Kat will become the 16th later this summer. And there's a lot of reasons for that: regulatory compliance, service to our member banks, trying to help them be as successful as they possibly can to serve their communities. Banks are businesses too. If the community is not successful, neither are we. We take that very seriously at the KBA. When we just recently went through a new strategic plan, and you'll see our mission statement here, but the Kansas Bankers Association strengthens and supports the banking industry by advocating for sound financial policies, promoting innovation, and fostering economic growth across the state to ensure a vibrant financial future for all Kansans. Once again, going back to the community side of things. Our membership includes 98% of the headquartered banks operating in Kansas, and that represent more than 21,000 Kansans that are employed by Kansas banks. We also represent about half of the out-of-state national or Missouri chartered institutions that may have a branch in Kansas, or even up to the largest institutions in our country. One thing with KBA that is very clear, and it is our very democratic process, it's one member, one vote. The smallest financial institution in Kansas has the same voting power with our membership as the largest financial institution in the United States. So very democratic. We run a very rigorous process before we bring policy to you. That's how our bankers like to do it. They're very detail-oriented and provide us the necessary data as well to bring before you. On page 2 of my testimony, I'm gonna go into a few of the services. And a little tip, when I get to education, I'll want to play one of these videos, but I'll give you a tip on that. But once again, not a traditional association. We have a subsidiary company called KBA Insurance. It's been around since 1900. Offer every kind of insurance: property, casualty, bond, director, officer liability, cybersecurity, health, dental, vision, pet insurance, you name it, any type of insurance that you would think you need, that is a service that we offer and has evolved over the years. Our biggest piece of our insurance department is our health plan. We have the 2nd largest group self-funded health plan in the state, behind the state itself with Blue Cross and Blue Shield. 11,000 lives that are covered and more than 70 million in premiums go through that plan a year. So a very robust plan. We also have a very active education and training department where we provide training from the frontline teller all the way up to the bank CEO and to the bank directors. And over 4,000 bankers last year went through training, 10 major conferences, lots of webinars. But we also work with Fort Hays State University's Robbins Banking Institute. We actually are in a contractual agreement with the university to manage what's called the Robbins Banking Institute. They were the first university in the state to implement a banking program, a banking certificate, to try and train the next generation of our industry. So we actually manage that part of the university, working with President Mason out there, of course. We have also recently launched an internship program that provides paid internships for any student, any college in Kansas that wants to become a Kansas banker. Very easy access. They apply on our website, and proud to report we have 84 college students across the state that have now applied for that program for this upcoming summer. And once again, it is a paid internship. It can be credit, it can be operations, it can be IT, it can be marketing, it can be whatever the bank needs. We also work with JAG-K. We partner with them every April for Financial Literacy Month, partner with all of their, I think they're up to 87 or 90 school districts they're working with now, where we actually, our Young Bankers program, partners with them to go into schools to provide them financial literacy training and talk about careers in banking. And then most recently, I want to give a tip of the hat to the OSBC. They do a fantastic job, committee, regulating our Kansas banks. They have a good team, always willing to have an open door relationship and have a conversation about what's going on. So their team does a great work. But we are working with them on financial literacy campaigns. And one of them I'd like to show first is regarding the family code word. Fraud is a serious issue, and it is getting worse and worse and worse. I don't want to be a fear monger, but it's getting bad. And I think you all know that. But we're trying to be proactive in some of the public campaigns to educate the general public. And if you want to please share the first one.
Hi, Grandma.
Tommy, is that you?
Yeah, it's me, and I'm in trouble, and I really need some money.
Oh, no. Well, of course I'll help, but first, what's the family code word?
Code word?
In 2023, Americans lost $9 billion to fraud, and phone scams like these are steadily increasing. Safeguard your family by establishing a family code word only known to family members, and verify that code word with the caller before taking any action.
Those numbers were 2023. We strongly do believe those 2024 numbers will be significantly higher. So when you're talking to your constituents, I'm more than willing to share these videos. They're on our social medias. If you want to share them with your constituents, please do. The more education, the better. With the advancement of AI and being able to copy people's voices, we can't take any chances. The next one, we actually partnered as well with the OSBC and our state treasurer, Stephen Johnson, regarding banks never asked that. If you could play the next one, that'd be great.
Hello? This is your bank. If there's a problem with your checking account, I'm going to need your account number and your password to clear that up.
No way. Banks never ask that. Every day, thousands of people fall for calls from scammers pretending to be a bank. If you receive a phone call from someone claiming to be your bank and asking for confidential information, the safest thing you can do is hang up. Remember, banks never ask that.
Couldn't think of a better person to be in that ad. And I hope the state treasurer is listening to this. I know his team follows this committee, but been working with him as well on education. And more we can do, the better. And the OSBC has helped with the seed money to help with that, with their fees and fines that are levied. They're able to do grants to educational foundations, and that is through our Kansas Bankers Educational Foundation. Thank you, Commissioner and team. Moving on to the next part of next part of the KBA is regarding our fastest growing part of our association, which is our legal and compliance department. We started a new service back in 2010 called Kansas Bankers Consulting Service to actually take that next step of legal services. KBA has always had a legal department. We call out, have a question about a regulation, but we crossed that line in 2010 where we can actually provide legal advice, where they can enter into a contractual agreement with our legal department. And we can help them with their legal documents. Kelly actually started out in that department before I stole her to the government relations department. And that has grown significantly. We have 128 of our member banks that are utilizing that additional service. And just last year, we entered into a partnership with the Missouri Bankers Association to take that service there as well. And we now have 10 Missouri headquarter banks that are utilizing that service. The MBA does not have a similar service like this. And with the Kansas City state line being right there, it makes sense. There's a lot of crossover. So we see that growing. And then also most recently, 2 years ago, we actually started a new service to outsource compliance services for our member banks, where we can actually act as the compliance officer for the team or for the bank. We are now up to 10 of our member banks that are utilizing that. When you think about workforce development, training, retaining, specifically in the rural areas, it's really hard. Train them up and then they leave to go to the big city. Once again, all of these services we're trying to provide is sustain that community bank model. I will state though, there is walls specifically within our legal department. Our legal people take that very seriously from a compliance and audit perspective. So there's some things that even myself, I cannot go back into our legal department to ask questions because there is that attorney-client privilege, and we respect that very seriously. So just want to make sure that's on the record. So that's it on the KBA. Moving into some industry testimony in my packet on page 3, you'll see a PowerPoint from the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City. For the record, I'm not an economist. You guys know that, but I do like sharing relevant information. The Kansas City Fed is a fantastic resource for economic data and information for you. So you can look at that as your leisure, but a few highlights. Inflation has come down, but still running a bit hot. Near-term inflation expectations continue to ease. Strong consumption is powering GDP growth, and the labor market remains healthy. On page 23 of the testimony, you'll see some QR codes and some links where you, as lawmakers, can subscribe to free economic bulletins, alerts, newsletters as well to learn more. They are also very, very receptive to questions too. So never hesitate to reach out to them. They can be a fantastic resource for you. On page 24 of my testimony, you'll see from the American Bankers Association, Kansas Bank's economic impact to the state of Kansas. Once again, I mentioned over 21,000 Kansans are employed. You'll see on that page where it says 210 headquartered. This is a little older data. As you heard today, it's around 200 headquartered now, and that trend continues to move. When I started the KBA almost 7 years ago, we were at 240. When Doug Wareham, my president and CEO, started the KBA in my role 21 years ago, it was 340. That trend is going the wrong way, and it's extremely concerning. And I'm gonna get to that here in a second. But you can see customer deposits, $100 billion in deposits, amount of small farm loans, small business loans. Once again, if you have questions after this committee, please don't hesitate to reach out. On page 25 of my testimony, you see the FDIC state profile. That kind of goes into the more nuts and bolts, hard numbers of the Kansas banking industry. We'll state Kansas banking industry is healthy and strong. I know there was discussion regarding an institution in the Kansas City area. We do believe that to be an isolated event and not a representation of the entire industry. So I want to make sure that's stated on the record. Our Kansas banks are well capitalized. When you look at halfway down the page on Tier 1 leverage, that's their capital on hand. There is a standard that banks must have. It's called community bank leverage ratio. And that's how much percentage they must have, and that number is 9%. Our Kansas banks are 10.97%. So once again, well capitalized. Getting into the next page of my testimony on page 26, you'll see what a slide that we like to use called boiling the frog. And it shows the trend that's going down. You just keep turning that heat up a little bit and a little bit more, and then you kill them. We're seeing that in the banking industry, specifically our community banks. And it's a trend that state and federal lawmakers and regulators need to take note of. I do not believe Kansas is well suited if we have 20 large banks. That's not good for competition. That's not good for access to credit. That's not good for local leadership and communities. When you think about specifically our rural communities, think about those stools of the school, the hospital, the grocery store, the bank's right there too. Once the bank goes away, there's some serious price to pay for that community, and we've seen that. Getting into that regulatory burden side of things on my next page, you'll see the regulatory burden or alphabet soup of regulators, state and federal. We are heavily regulated. I'm never going to say that banks should not be regulated. We're dealing with people's money. You absolutely should be heavily regulated, but it needs to be tailored regulation. It needs to be reasonable regulation. Unfortunately, since the Dodd-Frank Act, it is not tailored and it is a little extreme. And some of it has gone beyond legislative authority that you all, or mainly federal, once again, OSBC does a fantastic job. A lot of this is federal. So you have the comptroller of the currency, the FDIC, the Federal Reserve, and the CFPB. There is significant changes coming. And I'm not trying to be political, guys. I really do try and wear my banking hat. But the last 4 years on the banking industry side has been rough. It has been extremely rough. There has been some things that have absolutely gone way further than what Congress has authorized them to do. And the first time in history, we have active litigation against our regulators. We don't want to do that. We want to work with them every step of the way, but we've been forced in that position. There's been changes already going on at those federal regulatory agencies. I'll mention the Federal Reserve and the Fed Board of Governors in DC. The Vice Chairman of Supervision resigned his vice chairmanship in fear that President Trump would fire him, forcing legal action of whether the president had that authority or not. But regardless, he did step down from his position as vice chairman. But he's still on the Board of Governors. Where Kansas should take note is we do have a Kansan on the Fed Board of Governors. Her name's Mickey Bowman. She used to be state bank commissioner, fifth generation banking family out of Council Grove, Kansas. She was a Trump appointee. She's one of the 2 on the Fed board. And the way that the resignation took place, since he didn't step down from the board, the president has to pick from the current board to be the next vice chair of supervision, which is a very, very big role. We're hopeful that our own Kansan can be selected for that position. She represents the community bank seat on the Fed Board of Governors. So she's doing a great job out there, and we'll see in the coming weeks there. FDIC, the president did actually just nominate an acting director. His name's Travis Hill. Kelly and I actually had the opportunity to meet with Travis, or acting director Hill now, last September, and he has a different view on how regulations should take effect in our on the banking industry. I have a few things on him later in a second too, but on page 28 of my testimony, you'll see the Pooled Money Investment Board portfolio holdings. I mentioned this because this is directly tied to the legislation that we have been working on for more than the last year. We've had informational hearings last year, interim hearings on the Centralized Collateral Pool and Pooled Money Investment Board Modernization Committee. That committee it took 2 days of hearings and did unanimously recommend legislation to this body. We've been working over the last year with the PMIB, the Pool Money Investment Board, State Treasurer, the League, the counties, the school board, you name it, and a heavy process, and trying to thread that needle on some good policy. And I feel very positive on where we're at, and hopefully that bill is introduced maybe even today. But the bottom line goal of that is the state of Kansas can do a better job of taking our own taxpayer dollars and investing it back in Kansas. We have, as of 11/30, $8.2 billion in state idle funds. That's rainy day fund, that's state healthcare stabilization. And out of those funds, 99.5% of that money goes outside the state. 13% of it goes outside the country, or to U.S. domiciled headquartered or U.S. domiciled Canadian banks. We do not believe all of our taxpayer dollars should be shipped outside the state. Part of the bill introduction, I'm not going to get way into that because you will hear way more. The goal is to take as much Kansas taxpayer dollars that your constituents, that we all pay, and invest that back into the Kansas community. The economic impact of that money, that rollover effect that we learn in economics is real. And we had a study conducted by Fort Hays State, which she'll provide a presentation during the hearing. Just a few things I'll mention that's come up. Housing is still a struggle. The age to own a house is hard. It keeps growing, higher and higher, and you're losing a generation of equity and being able to invest in other ways. M&A activity, there was a survey recently done by Bank Director that shows that 2 in 5 bank leaders believe their institution will buy another bank in 2025. We haven't had a new bank, ribbon cutting, de novo bank since 2007 or 8. Can't remember the exact date. No entry into the marketplace. That's not good. How do we get back to that? That is a regulatory standard actually from the FDIC that requires you to have a significant amount of capital on hand to start a bank, 35 million actually. You do that in a rural community and try and deploy that, you actually create a more unsafe bank. Once again, these regulations are not tailored. Maybe that makes sense in the Kansas City area, but definitely doesn't make sense in the rural Kansas area. But it's cheaper to buy a bank charter than to start a bank. So that's concerning. FDIC, Acting Chairman Hill, I saw an article this morning, so this is fresh, but he's planning to rescind the problematic previous administration's proposed rules on corporate governance. You've heard me talk about ESG before this legislature. I hate it as much as everybody. I don't like the conservative side. I don't like the progressive side. Free market, let businesses operate as long as they're doing it in a legal and non-discriminatory manner. So there are some things on that. The Federal Reserve actually just pulled out of their coalition on climate change. The FDIC pulled back from their group as well. So there is some market changes that are already happening from a regulatory burden side, but also a consumer sentiment. Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. We know there's a crypto bill on the Senate side, Senate Bill 34, that would allow Director Conroy to invest 10% of our CAPERS funds in Bitcoin. This president is very active on being Bitcoin friendly, potentially leading to more open crypto policies, but there are still a lot of concerns. There's a lot of people making money on crypto. There's a lot of people losing money on crypto. It does not have good regulations either. And there's a lot of fraud going on with it too. You think about those Bitcoin machines in some of the malls and other places. We're hearing horror stories of people pulling out $10,000 in cash and putting it in a machine and just oof. So if we're going to go down that route, we need to make sure we're doing everything we can from a safety perspective to protect Kansans. A new term I learned this week, and I always like sharing something kind of interesting that may make you laugh. It's a crime, but it's jackpotting. I don't know if you've ever heard of that term. I didn't hear about it until this week. It's regarding criminals accessing the ATM cabinet, connecting a laptop or skimming device, and installing malware that forces the ATM to dispense cash. Criminals can do this in as little as 5 to 10 minutes. Criminals are getting smarter, and once again, this is the modern day type bank robbery. You know, you hear less and less of people actually going into a bank, holding the place up. Thankfully, that's safe if they're going to rob the ATM, but don't rob it at all, I hope. But I'd rather you not hurt people. So there's just, once again, we're on the defense on everything fraud right now, and the amount of money that consumers are losing, the amount of money that financial institutions are losing. When you talk about credit cards getting hacked as well, and the reissuance of cards and paying those transactions. Another reason why we have so many attorneys on our team. We're trying to do everything we can, and we do plan to reach out to the Attorney General soon to talk about some of these fraud things and what we can do. But Mr. Chairman, really appreciate the time. I appreciate this committee's work and listening to me today, and I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Appreciate that, Alec, and I appreciate you getting into the crypto stuff too, because I think we do have to ask ourselves with the new administration on the federal level, with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, are we ready for it? But also, are you ready for it too? So that's a good point. I didn't get my Doge update though.
Doge and Trump coin. There's all that going on too, and that is up in the market. But once again, still very volatile market.
Committee, any questions for Alex? Coach.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Alex. That was very good. On your code word, I never heard that before. Now, that is done just within your own family. The bank has nothing to do with it. All you do is get your family together and say, hey, look, if we get this phone call, we ask for this code word.
Yes, only internal family for emergencies.
Thank you.
Because you could think about it, somebody could call you out of your house too for an emergency, and they try and get you out of your house. And so you may think about using the code word like, hey, I'm stranded on the side of the road. Can you come get me? Somebody could be watching you and they could break into your house too. So, I mean, it could be used for a whole variety of things, not just from a financial standpoint.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions for Alex? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you mentioned about the fraud, just to piggyback off of that. And I think you had like 9 million as the figure, but it's growing and growing. And so when you talk about passing it on to consumers, I'm assuming like high interest rates and some of those others, what are some other ways that we're absorbing those costs?
I'll have to defer to the banker in the room. You have a really good one coming next, Sean Mitchell. He's a real life banker. I work for him, but my understanding is $9 billion in fraud. So that's consumer losses. So the consumer's losing it. But when it comes to the fraud that's going on, when I mentioned, us covering a transaction or reissuance of cards, yes, it comes down to fees and it comes down to interest rates. You got to pay for it somehow. And I know there's been a kind of a war on fees and over the last couple of years, and overdraft fees, and that's terrible. Public demand and surveys have shown people like their overdraft protection. They would rather overdraft than get declined at the grocery store. So some of these fees people would actually not like to pay, but they prefer that instead of the alternative. So yes, those are recouped that way. But if I know Mr. Mitchell next could probably elaborate more.
And with that, we will. Alex, thank you so much. Alex will be around in this committee often, so use him and the KBA as a resource as well, and we'll hear from you soon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Up next, we will call up Sean Mitchell with the Community Bankers Association. Sean, welcome to the committee, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Sean Mitchell. I am President and Chief Executive Officer of the Community Bankers Association of Kansas. I have been there now. This is my 17th session down here representing our community banks. I am a 30-year community banker. I've been in 3 different community banks through my career, being President and Chief Executive Officer of a small ag bank in Wakefield, Kansas, just outside of Manhattan. My first bank was the Bison State Bank, a total of $6 million in assets. That's not a B, that's an M, with a staff of 4. So I have worn every single hat you can wear in a community bank. I've just always been on this side. So now it's my honor to represent the bankers here. The Community Bankers Association was formed in 1978. To be a member of us, you have to be a locally owned, locally held community bank within the state of Kansas. So we are different from the KBA in that we represent approximately 40% of the banks in the state. Every single one of our members is a member of the KBA. We just represent those smaller, locally owned banks that want to make sure there's someone else watching just for them. We do not represent the large, national, huge banks. They're not even eligible. So 99% of the time, you're going to hear me and Alex, we're going to talk the same thing up here. We agree, the KBA and the CBA, almost all the time. I'm here for that one chance when it doesn't. Where we tend to differ more is on the federal level with our national associations because we don't represent the big banks. So most of the time, we're going to be in agreements. I'm just more the watchdog. I prefer to be pretty concise. If you have questions, I'm always available. My information's on the stuff I gave to you. I am not always down here. We are a shop of 3 staff, and I do all of the federal issues as well. So I spend a lot of my time there. When I'm not here, we use the services of Little Government Relations. Stuart Little, Mallory Lutz, Mallory's back here. So they're always, and they have interns that are always watching and listening when I can't be here. Mallory rolls me out when it's something that I really need to be here and make a point. So for that, you will see me occasionally if it's a big issue or not, those sort of things. I did give you some analytics. I'm an analytical nerd, but I prefer graphs and charts. So you have a nice 32-page color thing on your PDF. If you have questions about banking state of Kansas that covers the nationally chartered banks as well as the state chartered, feel free to look through that. I'm happy to answer questions on that. I always refer people to the bank commissioner's office. You've got a great regulator here who understands that, and you know there's absolutely zero spin when you talk to the OSBC. They can explain those things very well. So use that resource if you can. With that, I thank you for the opportunity. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Committee, do we have any questions for Sean? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Look forward to hearing from you further this year. All right, committee, that kind of wraps up our business today. I do have 2 quick housekeeping. I neglected earlier, and I apologize for it. Not mentioning that we are a paperless committee, but we do make exceptions. So if you are somebody that would like printouts and papers, please get with Rich, and we'll provide those. But to the best of our ability, we try to be as paperless as possible. And then I do, as Alex referenced earlier, I do have another bill introduction. It's 25 RS 0041. It deals with the pulled collateral, as Alex was saying. We just got word a little bit ago during committee that the bill was ready to be introduced. So that's going to be introduced on behalf of the Special Committee on Centralized Pull Collateral and PMIB Modernization. That is the interim committee that met in the off session and recommended this legislation for the committee. Because they recommended it, we have to introduce it under that name. So that's what it will be under. With that, anything further from the committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned. We'll see you Monday.